So for those of you joining today, I am meeting with Bev Wright of the Wright Choice Group. She is a coach, and we have known each other now for at least 3 or 4 years.
Exactly.
And so thank you so much for coming in and being a part of this interview.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know Bev Wright, she has worked at IBM for over 30 years, and she's served in many capacities. One of those being an entrepreneur, as you call yourself. Working to start business groups and units and different initiatives within IBM, and then also as an entrepreneur with your own coaching.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm a Dallas native, born and raised, and I always like to say stayed here on purpose.
Okay.
And so I always knew that this is where I wanted to end up when I chose to make a change in my career. And so I was fortunate enough to work with a company that was large enough to let me to continue to grow and contribute, but stay within the same company and the same geography.
Great.
So I'm very invested in this part of the country. I think the other thing about my years at IBM is it laid a really good foundation for what I'm doing as an entrepreneur. I had a chance to work in a global company with people that were very diverse in the way they thought and in their desire for innovation and to continue to contribute to society as well as to the business world. And so I was exposed to a lot of wonderful concepts about innovation and creativity. And I also had a chance to figure out what I think I was really gifted at doing, which was developing people. And so I was in different parts of the company. I started in administration and then moved to sales and then marketing before my final role in operations, where I was talent management exec for inside sales.
Right, which is when we met.
Exactly.
Very good. Very good. So today we have an important topic that is very relevant for today's leaders. So why don't you tell us about what we're going to speak about today?
Well, we're going to talk about, in broad strokes, employee engagement. There are many ways to look at it, but one of the things I saw over time is that companies most often say their people are their biggest assets.
Right.
But they're not always sure how they actually execute that so that people really feel like they're the most important asset.
Sure.
And even in this age of innovation and technology, you still have people that have to be very integrally involved in any process. No matter how much technology you have in it, it starts with people. And so they really are the most important asset. And what we're going to talk about is how companies can really leverage what I call the return on people so that they get an increased return on investment.
Excellent. It sounds like a very timely topic, one that I've thought about quite a bit. Having worked in I've actually worked in 3 Fortune 100 companies, and you hear that all the time. People are the biggest asset, but sometimes when you're sitting in the cube, you're wondering, how is it that I'm the most valuable person here, or a valuable part of the company? Because it's hard to see that.
Absolutely. And Walt Disney, I love quotes, and Walt Disney said that our most important asset goes home every night. And I think that was his way of talking about, no matter how many characters he created, the most important leverage he had in growing Disney to the company that even beyond his time is still relevant is the people, because they are the ones that touch the customers. They are the ones that represent the brand in the marketplace.
Perfect. Well, very good. So let's get into that now.
Okay, wonderful. Well, again, I mentioned that I like quotes. And so one of my favorite quotes is a Chinese proverb that says, if you want 1 year of prosperity, grow grain. If you want 10 years of prosperity, grow trees. If you want 100 years of prosperity, grow people. And so I think that really kind of puts into very quickly and succinct way what we're going to talk about today, is that the return on people is really the only long-term strategy that companies can count on.
Very good, very good. So tell us what you're seeing and what we can do about that.
Well, there is a book called The 2020 Workplace that came out a few years ago, and it really was looking forward to what do we need to see that are going to be the major factors that are impacting companies and, in fact, the world. And one of the things that they talked about is it's going to be the generational changes that are going on in the workplace. It's going to be globalization, because you're no longer an island, whether you want to be or not. That's just not a choice. And then that there is going to be about skills. right? People have to keep growing. And so I think those are the dynamics that we're dealing with. And many companies are not really sure yet how they address those issues. How do they plan in 2014 for 2015 and beyond?
Right.
And
right.
even though as we sit here, we think 2020 sounds like it's a long way away, it's really not, especially in terms of preparing to be competitive in the future.
Sure, sure. Well, should we just start with the generational concept?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a baby boomer.
Okay.
And so there are things about baby boomers and about every generation that we went to work in a different environment than we exist in today. When we talk about 2020 workplace, that was the farthest thing from my mind when I really started. But what I was told and my peers were told is, get with a good company, work really hard, and you'll probably be able to retire from there if you do a good job.
Sure, and I know a lot of people, including my own father, who had a very long career at IBM.
Yeah. And so, we really bought into that. Companies were in a place where most of them could deliver on that contract, if you will, with
Sure.
the employees. And so for a long time, that was kind of the plan. And as parents, you would tell your children, go get some education, and then, you pick a company that you think you can grow with, and then stick with that, and that'll take care of you the rest of your life.
Sure.
Well, let's jump forward to today's environment. And when you talk, and I have 2 children. One is a Gen Xer, and the other one is a millennial.
Okay.
So I see the profiles of those 2 generations play out in my children. So my son is the millennial, and he has a completely different concept. And he did happen to work at one time in a corporation when he was in college. And he didn't like it. Number one, it was not, it didn't give him the social contact that he wanted, as far as being able to see that what he did every day really affected the larger community.
Yes.
And I think that that's very true with the millennials. They want to know, they don't want to be cogs in a machine.
Right.
They want to know that every day when I put in 8 hours or whatever that time is, that I can look and see that I had some impact. So very early on, they want to be involved with the company that does good things for the community.
Yes, very social conscious.
Very, very social. And I think many companies don't really understand that, and so they don't give them an avenue to do that early on. Most companies I talk to, even today, say that the people they can't retain are the millennials. They usually stay from 0 to 3 years.
And I think it's because they are misunderstood. What was a driver for our generations was the idea of moving up the chain, making more money. And they sacrifice money and even material things for being more involved in things that they find meaning in.
Yeah, it was interesting. A few years ago, I participated in a diversity group, and we had a millennial panel that was made up of young people all under the age of 25 that worked for different companies. And we had a Q&A session where we talked to them about what really was important to them. And I will never forget that one of the young women on the panel said, frankly, my husband and I, she happened to be married, she said, my husband and I have expensive hobbies. That's why we work. She said, but we want to make a difference.
Right.
And so the work that we do, we have to see that it's going to matter. And the other thing that I noticed is that they really will quit jobs without having another job. And that's primarily because they've been raised by my generation that said, you can always come home, right? Because we want you to be happy.
Right.
So happy is a big driver, and they get to determine what happy looks like.
Right. Doesn't always make the previous generation happy.
Exactly.
But it certainly makes them happy.
For example, I remember when we used to have a program where they would really understudy an executive. It would be kind of like an internship. And I remember at one point we had a young employee understudy for a year, follow around and shadow one of our top execs.
Right.
And at the end of that period, he came back and said, I really got a lot out of that, and what I've decided is I don't want to do that. He said, I don't want to work the number of hours he works and really not see that my life had an impact outside of this company. And so companies are having to figure out how do we because these are our leaders for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they have to find a way to engage them so that they really want to stay with the company and they see the impact of the work that they do every day.
Right, right. And you said that you also coach millennials.
Yes.
And that
Right.
I'm assuming these are some of the reasons when you've talked to them as to why they're leaving companies.
You know, it's so interesting we're talking about that. I had lunch with one of the millennials that I mentor yesterday. And we were having a conversation. He has a job that most people would think is a great job. And he said to me, he said, you know, he's talking to me about his relationship with his manager, which is another theme that's very prevalent. And he said, you know, I decided that I'm leaving after Thanksgiving. And it was just that matter of fact. He said, we've been talking about another opportunity that he has that he thinks will end up in a job that he plans to move to. And he's been working on this for like 6 months. So keep in mind, he's working at a company.
Right.
And he's doing his job, and he's doing well at his job. But he's already looking for his next job.
Right.
And he's got what he thinks is in place for him to be able to move to this next job. January was the plan. But he says to me yesterday, because of an interaction he had with his manager, he said, you know, I just decided that Thanksgiving, whether this other one comes in January or now, he said, I'm meeting with them tomorrow, which would be today.
Right.
He said, and then, you know, I've just decided that after Thanksgiving, I'm done. And I'll just redouble my efforts in, you know, moving the timeline up on the current. And so what you see is that's very common in my experience as I talk to them. They make decisions based on their value system, what they're looking for, and if they're not getting what they need at the current company, they've got another plan already, and they're showing up doing their work. Many people in other generations think sometimes that they don't have a work ethic. That's not what I see at all. They are willing to work really, really hard, but they want a couple of things. They want feedback, whether it's you're doing a great job or here's where you need to improve. They don't really care. They just want communication.
Right.
And they want more of it than other generations needed.
Right.
So managers should be prepared to give them regular feedback that says you're either going the right way, or we need you to do these things, or, you know, here's the other thing. So because for the example I just gave you, that's one of his issues is I talked to my manager about some things, told him what I really needed to see. I haven't seen that. It's been 6 months.
Sure.
So for them, 6 months is a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's already saying, okay, I need a different plan because I've told them and I've told them 3 times and it's been 6 months.
Right.
Time for me to move on.
Yeah, so I want to explore that a little bit more. So in this next segment, let's go ahead and talk about the engagement and what managers can do.
Absolutely.